Welcome to the One Deal Millionaire podcast, where we don't just bounce properties, we flip mindsets. I'm JD Allen, Marine Corps veteran, engineering leader, and your multifamily investment mentor. If you're stuck chasing small gains, we're here to change the game. Each week, we dive into strategies to bounce your way to your first million. No fluff, no hype, just real talk, real deals, and real momentum. The majority of people that I know believe debt is the enemy, and I used to be one of them. I believe the only way to breathe again was to pay every single thing off. But what if I told you that debt isn't the problem, that the real issue is how you use it? Because the right kind of debt, that's the gateway to freedom. Not stress, not shame, not struggle, but ownership, income, and control. This episode isn't just about money. It's about rewriting your mindset in regards to money and flipping that fear into fuel. They told me debt'll kill you, said pay it all and pray. But I saw the wealthy living they leveraged every day. Bad loans had me gasping, choking on the bills. Now I borrow to buy buildings, stacking wealth with skills. See, it's not about the debt. It's the cash that it makes. Turn a loan to an asset now that I'm raising the stakes. I ain't shackled to the payment. I'm the one getting paid. Flip the script on debt and watch your life get made. Look, debt was always the villain in my life story. Every month felt like a battle just to stay afloat. Those credit cards were stacking up on interest. Car notes were draining my bank account, and I thought the solution was simple. Pay it all off and peace was going to follow. But guess what? The peace never came. Just more bills and more stress. Then I came across something that shook me. The problem wasn't debt. It was the kind of debt that I had and the way that I was using it. That's when everything clicked. There's a massive difference between debt that bleeds you dry and debt that builds you up. Most people are stuck with bad debt, high interest loans, liabilities, zero return. But the wealthy, they borrow on purpose. They leverage to buy cash flowing assets, and those assets pay for everything else. See, it's not about avoiding loans. It's about using the right kind of loan to buy the right kind of thing. When I got into real estate, I stopped chasing debt free and started chasing cash flow rich. I learned how to buy properties using other people's money and how that debt could actually buy me freedom. That's what this episode is going to be about. Shifting from a fear-based finances to power moves. So if you've ever felt buried under debt, if you've ever thought, I just want it all paid off so I can breathe again, let's flip that script. Let's talk about how to breathe differently by owning the asset, collecting the income, and letting smart debt build your future. So where does this fear come from? Why do so many people treat loans like a four-letter word? It's the mindset most of us have grown up with. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that debt equals danger. And that advice usually came from people we loved, like our parents, our grandparents, people who lived through hard times. Maybe they watched their friends lose their home. Maybe they lost their own home. Maybe they worked their entire lives just to stay afloat. Their message came from experience and from pain, and their goal was just to protect us. But that message, it stuck around way longer than what it should have. If you can't pay for it in cash, you can't afford it. That mindset shaped an entire generation of savers, hardworking people constantly looking for peace through being debt-free. But here's what rarely gets talked about. While that middle class is working overtime to become debt-free, the wealthy are using strategic debt to build income and accelerate wealth. And that's where you got to flip those scripts. People avoid debt like it's fire. Meanwhile, investors are using it to cook a feast. And here's the trap. When you believe all debt is bad, you stop asking some of those critical questions. What is the debt actually going to do? So let's unpack that a little bit. Bad debt is what we've seen way too often. Credit cards maxed out on stuff that loses value fast. Car loans on vehicles that depreciate the moment you drive off. Some of these cars cost as much as the house. And personal loans for clothes, gadget, vacations, you name it, they have paid for it on a credit card. These are liabilities. They cost you money and they're never going to pay you back. But good debt, that's the kind of debt that fuels wealth. Borrowing to buy income producing assets like real estate or a business is a completely different game. One gives you stress, the other gives you cash flow. Traditional thinking doesn't make that distinction. It just lumps it all together. All debt is dangerous. All loans are chains. That could not be further from the truth. And the problem isn't the loan, it's what you use the loan for and whether you understand how it works. Think about this. Two people each take a $200,000 loan. One goes out and buys a boat. One goes out and buys a 10-unit apartment complex. Same loan, completely different outcome. One is paying it back every month, the other gets paid every month. That's the power of good debt. So let me challenge this belief head on. Is the goal to be debt free, or is the goal to be free, period? Because freedom isn't about having no loans. It's about owning assets that pay you whether you work or not. And when you understand that, you stop seeing debt as something to avoid and start seeing it as a tool to unlock the opportunities. The traditional belief keeps people playing defense. But investors, we're playing offense with clarity, with strategy, with cash flow and leverage. And that's what we're diving into. The mindset split between poor dad and rich dad, or rich dad and poor dad, and how it forever changed how I view money, loans, and ownership. Let's talk about Robert Kiyosaki and what he says we have been taught. We have been taught to go to school, get a safe job, pay off your debt, and play it safe. But his advice, use other people's money to buy income producing assets, focus on cash flow, not job security. One teaches fear-based finance, avoiding the risk, avoiding the debt, avoiding the loss, and the other teaches wealth building. Understand the rules, use leverage, and create value. That shift in thinking has rocked me, and it rocked me then, and it still rocks me. I love it because I realized I'd been following the poor dad principles in a rich dad world. I wasn't broke because of how hard I worked, because I was working really hard. I was broke because of how I thought about money. That realization didn't come to me overnight. It came with some hard lessons, sleepless nights, and debt that kept me awake at 3 a.m. thinking about what I was going to do next. So let me tell you how it played out in my own life. Not that cleaned up version, but the raw truth. How I went from suffocating under the weight of bad loans to learning how to breathe again through smart, leveraged investments. Now here's my story. I was $80,000 in debt, had left a bad marriage, was dealing with repossessions, was dealing with numerous credit cards. My credit had been ruined, and I did not know what I was going to do next. And all that everyone told me was, be sure to pay off that debt if you want to get yourself in a better situation. I want you to think about it. $80,000 in debt, and that's paying 50% of those credit card bills. I could pay $80K or I can invest $80K. And if I could come up with $80,000 to pay off these credit cards and pay off these bad loans, I could surely figure out how to get $80,000 to buy my investment property. Because every night was terrible. Every day was stressful. I was coming back wondering if my car was going to be sitting there the next day. That's just how it was. And I decided to push myself into purchasing a duplex. A simple duplex. Not that big of a deal, but it changed my life. Because I started taking that money from that duplex and started using it to pay off some of these bad debts. And I started slowly digging my way out of that debt hole, that giant hole that I had dug myself into. And I remember that I took that money from that duplex and rolled it into another duplex, and then rolled it into a triplex, and then rolled it into a mobile home park, and rolled it into an apartment complex. And before long, $80,000 didn't seem like a lot of money. I had paid all of that debt off and was actually working with valuable assets, assets that were bringing me in money. And I was no longer dealing with those expenses that were killing me on a day-to-day basis, that were hurting my soul. Life changing. Life changing. Because if I had taken that $80,000 that I was going to use to pay this off, I would still be sitting here today talking about how I could have done this or I should have done this. Could have, would have, should have, but didn't and stayed broke. But what happened? And that rolling penny, doubling that stuff up, changed the entire outcome of my life. Now think about that. After I changed how I viewed debt, I changed what I used it for. And real estate, that was the vehicle that flipped everything. Unlike that car that was losing value or a new gadget that's outdated within a few months, a well-bought piece of real estate works for you every single day. It can cash flow month after month, appreciate in value over time, and give you ownership of a tangible wealth-building asset. But here's where the magic happens. You don't need to save up hundreds of thousands of dollars to start. With the right kind of leverage, a loan from a bank, a private investor, or even the seller with seller financing, you can control a multi-unit property with a small fraction of your own money. It's called using leverage. And it's how wealthy people grow fast while everyone else is stuck trying to save their way to freedom. For example, let's say you buy a $1 million apartment building. You put down $100,000, the other $900,000 comes from a loan. You now own 100% of that building. You're controlling the rents. You're benefiting from appreciation. You're keeping the cash flow. And the tenants are paying the loan for you. This is how I started building wealth without having millions in the bank. Real estate gave me a repeatable playbook. Buy smart, improve the property, increase the income, refinance it or sell, and roll the profits into the next one. It's about taking on calculated leverage tied to cash flowing assets. That's the difference. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching people that debt is not the enemy. Ignorance is. When you combine financial education with real estate and leverage, you stop trading time for money. You build something that pays you even when you're sleeping. For years, I carried the weight of that $80,000 in debt. And the message in my head was clear: pay everything off. Debt is dangerous. You're not free until it's all gone. I truly believed the only way to move forward was to erase the past. But no matter how hard I pushed, I felt stuck. And when I decided that I had to start building out passive income, a term that I had heard before but didn't even know what it was, it sounded like a dream that everybody else got to live. And the more I studied, I realized that real estate wasn't just about buying properties. It was about buying an income. And everything had flipped from that point forward. I didn't have to have it all figured out. I just ran the numbers and saw the potential and cash flowed. I had realized that owning something that paid me was the very thing that could help me pay everything else down faster. And that little duplex was a spark. Rent checks were coming in, and for the first time, my money wasn't just going out, it was coming back. It changed me, not just financially, but mentally. And then I started asking, how fast can I build something that pays me? How can I make this happen? I had shifted from a debt fear to a strategic leverage, from surviving to building. The fear didn't vanish overnight, but every single time I made a smart move, every time I invested in an asset instead of a liability, that fear lost a little more power, and clarity replaced it, along with confidence and direction. See, freedom doesn't come from avoiding every risk. It comes from understanding that game and playing it differently. So if you've ever been stuck in a belief that you have to pay everything off before you can move forward, I hope today challenged that. Because the truth is, you don't have to be debt-free to be free. You don't have to wait until you've made it to start building. You just have to shift your mindset from fear to strategy. Start seeing debt not as something to avoid, but as something to understand, leverage, and use wisely. Because real wealth isn't built by avoiding every mistake. It's built by taking intentional action and stacking no small wins. So maybe your next step isn't paying everything off. Maybe it's learning how to make your money move. Maybe it's buying that first duplex or running the numbers on a deal. Whatever it is, don't stay stuck. You were built for more than survival. You were built to build. 80 grand in the red, man. I felt the weight. Thought I had to pay it off just to elevate. But then I learned a game. Flip fear into flow. Bought a duplex. Now the cash don't slow. It's not the debt. It's what you do with the loan. Use it right. Now I'm sitting on a throne. Assets over stress. Now I rise with grace. Wealth ain't a race. It's leverage pace. Thank you for rocking with me today. If this message hits you hard, send it to someone that needs to hear it. And if you're ready to take that first step, run the numbers, get educated, or just rewire how you think about money, remember this. The goal isn't to be debt-free. The goal is to be financially free. I'm JD Allen, and I'll see you next time on the journey to building wealth, flipping mindset, and owning your future. That's it for today's episode of the One Deal Millionaire podcast. If you got value from this, share it with a friend who's ready to stop playing small. And remember, wealth isn't built by watching, it's built by moving. So take what you learned, apply it, and keep the velocity of money working in your favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and stay in the loop at thebouncemethod.com. And until next time, keep bouncing forward.